Welcome back to the Christian Capitalist Podcast, everybody. I'm Rich Sanders, your host, and delighted to be joined today by my friend Avery Ratzlaff in Tempe, Arizona. Good morning, Avery.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great, and gold star to you for waking up early on Arizona time, which
Thank you.
it's 10 o'clock here in the morning in the central time zone. And because Arizona doesn't change its time, I have really no idea what it is for you out there. What time is it now?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. All right, good. Well, thank you for getting to work early so you can record this. We see outside you got a beautiful blue sky day in the desert. Looks great. I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. And everybody, as you know, you can always like, follow, share these episodes, follow us on social media, and pass them along to others who you're interested in hearing the story of Avery and her ministry at Arizona State. You can also follow the Christian Capitalist movement and learn more about us at christiancapitalist.life. But first, we need to talk about Avery and your missionary work. It's so funny that you moved outside at your restaurant today because you're sitting at a table where we met you just about a year ago. So why don't we start off with that? How did we meet?
Yes. Okay. Great. From my point of view, so
yeah, from your point of view.
My point of view. Yes. Okay. So you and your family had come into the restaurant where I'm working part-time currently, and y'all came in, took your order. I thought y'all were friendly people, and you ended up sitting outside, and I ended up bringing out your food, and we kind of struck up a conversation largely because you commented on the cross necklace that I was wearing, which I'm wearing right now, which is really fun. And so, yeah, you said, I like your cross necklace, and I'm always looking for opportunities. If someone comments on my necklace or if someone else is wearing a cross necklace, that's the end for the first step in a conversation to talk about the Lord, right? So you complimented it, and I'm like, okay, these people know what's going on. So then the conversation started, and I said, I'm always looking for an opportunity to talk about the Lord. God's transformed my life, and so if I have an opportunity to talk about it, I want to be able to do so. So that's kind of where the conversation started.
Right on.
You can take it from there.
I love it. And so the family, Rebecca and I, are blessed to have 3 kids. The part of our family that we were meeting and having lunch with was our son Will, who's a baseball player in the minor leagues for the Chicago Cubs. And he loves to come to your restaurant, which is called Flower Child, because it's good, delicious food and clean, as he likes to say. So Rebecca and Will and I were sitting outside right where you are now and got a chance to strike up this conversation. Avery, how did you get to the point where you're working at Flower Child in Tempe, Arizona? Did you go to Arizona State?
Oh, great question. Okay, so I have to backtrack a few years. So
right.
I'm originally from Colorado, and I ended up deciding to come to Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona for school. I'll be honest with you, I never thought I was going to go out of state. I always said I'm a Colorado girl through and through. I cannot see myself leaving. Well, God had a different plan for me, clearly. And as I was praying about where to go to school, I felt so strongly I was supposed to go to GCU in my decision making. So to make a long story short, I end up at GCU for my education, for my undergrad. I studied marketing and advertising and minored in graphic design. So the marketing world is the business world, which is relevant to this conversation. So go to GCU for my undergrad. And then right before I graduated, I ended up getting a job working for a company doing marketing, but also, once again, felt like I wasn't supposed to take that job, and I felt strongly I was supposed to look for other options. And at the time, I had no other options set before me. And I was like, God, I want to stay in Arizona after I graduate. I don't want to go back to Colorado for the time being. God, what do I do? And so he, directed me to be able to work for the university. So right after I graduated in fall of 2021, I started working for the university in the Office of Admissions and Recruitment and Enrollment. And so I was recruiting and enrolling students. And within the first month of me working in that department, I got asked, more like told, that I was going to work with international students. And I did not want to do it. I will be so honest with you. Don't tell my old manager. But I did not want to do it because I knew it was going to be harder. But once again, God had a plan in that. And so I started doing that. And within that time frame, God just started to stir a love for international students on my heart. And I realized that we could get into it more later, but I realized there's a super great need there for them to have friendship and community and to have someone to walk alongside them in their life. And so I started volunteering with this ministry that was separate from GCU, and start volunteering with this ministry because I could get involved and didn't have to worry about any rules or regulations within the realm of my job at GCU.
Right.
So the ministry I started volunteering with was International Students Incorporated. And so I started volunteering. Fast forward to fall of last year, I ended up leaving my job at Grand Canyon University to be able to go full-time campus staff with International Students Incorporated, to be able to serve and come alongside international students full-time at Arizona State. So I did not go to Arizona State, but now my whole world is in Tempe. I decided to start working part-time as I'm raising support, which goes with the territory of being a full-time campus staff, campus missionary, as some people like to put it. And so, never would have thought in a million years I would be here working part-time or at Arizona State. But God clearly has had a plan. So hopefully
He's got a plan for you.
Question there.
Oh, that's a fantastic answer, Avery, and gives me about a million more questions to ask. So I hope you got some time.
Right, I got you.
Well, and it's funny because over your shoulder, I see a couple of buildings, including one of them, I think, is the indoor practice facility for the Arizona State football team. I mean, you're right on campus as we're talking today, right?
Yes.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yes.
So let's go backtrack, I think is a good way to put it. When you're in Colorado, where are you from in Colorado?
In between Boulder and Denver. So most people know Denver, most people know Boulder. It's pretty northern Colorado. Northern
Colorado. One of our guests on the podcast who, now that I think about it, I really want to introduce you to, is a young man that went to Liberty University out in Virginia. And he moved to Colorado because his name is Jojo Gallagher, and now he's a young life minister and focuses on middle school kids in Boulder, Colorado. The reason, it's so fun, and he loves living in the mountains where you used to live and where you were born and raised in northern Colorado. But one of the reasons he decided to move to Boulder is that he did the research and found that it's the second most, what's the right way to say it? It's the town with the second least churches per capita in the United States. So basically, if you look at, the number of churches and the number of people in a community, Boulder is the least churched. So he went out there to plant churches. In the end, he ended up being a young life minister, but he has found that Boulder has a lot of people who haven't heard about Jesus yet. As a young person growing up in Colorado and feeling called to go to Grand Canyon, it sounds to me like you have a really deep relationship with the Lord, and that your prayer life is not just day to day, it's hour by hour. What was that like as a young person in Colorado? And did you have a community of Christians with you, or did you find what Jojo experienced where you and your family were kind of outliers?
Okay, so that's a very loaded question. I'm very grateful and thankful to say that I grew up in a family that knows the Lord and has encouraged me in the Lord my whole life. I will preface that to say one thing I've always been very thankful for with my parents specifically is that they've always said, we're raising you so that you know the Lord, raising you to know the Lord and have a personal relationship with Jesus on your own. But it was always encouraged that it was between me and the Lord. It wasn't my family's faith. Mm-hmm. It was my faith with the Lord. And they always said, God comes before us. Your decisions, your actions, it's between you and God, not between us and you, and I respect and honor my parents a lot for that. So, my faith journey has been a progression of learning what it means to follow Jesus for myself and what I believe apart from my family, even though they've had a huge, part in helping me come to know the Lord for myself. What I'll say is I was in Christian community in Colorado, but I would definitely say, I grew up around, seeing homeless community in Boulder. If you have ever visited Boulder or familiar with the area, that's a big part of the area, or travelers, as they like to say. There's some amazing people there, but there's a lot of influence from the world, a lot of non-believers. Mm-hmm. There is churches there, but it's sparse, I would say, in comparison to, if you've ever visited the South, the Bible Belt, and you see a church on the corner.
Right, exactly.
which I would say is actually pretty similar to here. There's a lot of churches here, but that doesn't mean that in the general population, the ratio of the number of people that actually know and follow the Lord is too great. So anyway, all that to say, I would say that it was challenging. I remember in my high school, I was one of the few believers that I knew in my high school, and I went to a pretty small high school. And that's a whole God story of being able to do FCA in my high school and having some challenging conversations there. But I would definitely see where I don't know for the minority exactly, but there's a lot of non-believers there in that area for sure.
Well, and so I'm glad to hear that you have a more comfortable environment in Tempe and in Phoenix. What was it like in that environment where in high school you're in the FCA, but you may be in a minority compared to your classmates? What's it like then going to a place like Grand Canyon University, which is a very devout Christian school?
That's right. That's a great question. I would say it was a difference. Tons of believers go to Grand Canyon University. There's one thing that I really appreciate about the university, though. One of the many things is that they're a missionally focused school. So you don't have to be a Christian to attend there. So what I loved about that is there was a lot of non-believers there as well, or people that kind of talking about my own faith journey, people that may have grown up in a Christian home, but didn't really come to know the Lord for themselves until they were in college. And so there was a lot of opportunity to have faith conversations with people that didn't know the Lord, but I would definitely say it was a very healthy, faith-filled environment where I was encouraged and sharpened by people. I would walk down my hallway and see people doing a Bible study. We had a life leader designated to our floor that would lead a Bible study every week. That was just a culture, going to chapel on Mondays. And it's something that I was really grateful for. And I desired in my college experience to be around believers to spur me on in those few years before I launched into my adult life.
Right. All right. So we, as a result of the book and the podcast, we, the Christian Capitalist Movement, have been so blessed to have a handful of college students raise their hand and say, I want to start a club, a Christian Capitalist club at my school. And that includes 5 young people who have volunteered to say, I want to be the president of this club. So given your experience in high school and then going to Grand Canyon and now as a campus missionary or campus staff for ISI, what kind of advice would you give those folks as they literally are kind of building their mission from ground up to try and teach other college students, not just to follow the Lord, but to take God to work with you every day, just like you did? I mean, I love the fact, Avery, and this is one of the reasons I think we've become friends over the last year. I love the fact that you say this cross on my neck is an opportunity to talk about Jesus, and I carry it everywhere I go. So what would you say to our young people who are interested in starting these clubs?
Yes. I'm so excited. I want to give them a big pep talk and just encourage them and challenge them. I would say first and foremost, Jesus and your relationship with Jesus is number one before any attendance, before any activity that you have, before anything that you do, any performance. It's you and Jesus. You need to get in the secret place with the Lord, spend time with him, get to know him more. And it's not just for you. You're getting built up and filled up so that you can pour it out. You're blessed to be a blessing, not only to the people that are in your circle in your day-to-day life, but the people you come in contact with every day. You are a light and you have the ability to shine in this very, very dark world and show people the love of God, just like you've been shown the love of God. And so I would say, be bold. That's another thing. Be bold, and don't be afraid to have hard conversations, because at the end of the day, you're learning and your identity is secure in who God has created you to be. It's not in who the world says that you are or what other people say about you. Your identity is secure. So don't be afraid to be bold. Have some hard, challenging conversations and show the love of God to people. It goes so much farther than you think, even with a smile or a conversation or telling people Jesus loves you, and they can feel that, they can see that through your actions and through your words.
Oh, I love that. Avery, I call that shining the light of Christ. And when you shine the light of Christ, people can see it in that dark world that you were just talking about, because I agree with you. And that's a part of our role as Christians. So speaking of which, when you talk about being bold and not being afraid to talk to people about Jesus, you are, I think, unique for a number of reasons, not to mention you've pursued your calling. You've got this great personality that you bring to your mission, but I think you're an extrovert. And so, for many people who are sitting there waiting or working in a restaurant, and some random 50-year-old from the South says, "Hey, nice necklace," you look at that as an opportunity to talk about Jesus. Others may say, "Ew, don't talk to me, old man," right? Or, "I don't want to talk to anybody because I'm an introvert." So, what part of what kind of challenges do you face in your ministry? Because coming up and talking to complete strangers does not seem to be one of them. But what other? But what kind of challenges do you face in your ministry?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question. Well, obviously the financial support aspect is something that we'll definitely have to touch on at some capacity, but briefly there, I would say even just thinking about my calling and deciding to pursue this ministry full time, I had to let go of a lot of dreams and a lot of desires and thoughts and plans that I had for my own. And so I would say anything with ministry, and I'm sure you can speak to this better than a lot of people, it's a lot of dying to self. It's a lot of, I thought I wanted these things for my life, but God, I know that you're calling me to do something else than I thought I was going to do. So how do I release that, surrender that to you, God, so I can follow what you've called me to do? So I would say a challenge in ministry is dying to yourself and just having that quick obedience to say, yes, God, whatever you want me to do, whenever you want me to do it, I want your plans, your will, your way over mine. So that's one,
tough. Yeah,
that's a challenge right there. And it comes with time, and I'm learning and growing in that. I would say, as I'm working with a lot of international students, people are coming from so many different faith backgrounds, different cultures, and I know some, but I have a lot to learn, right? So how do you articulate the gospel? How do you articulate the love of God in a way that is going to be received the best to someone that comes from a different part of the world that has had different life experiences? And so I think just challenges with that of trying to be able to meet them where they're at and depend on the Lord and just ask him to be the one speaking through me, leading me and guiding me in those dynamics. And so, I don't know if you know this, Rich, but there's currently 14,000 international students at Arizona State University.
That's a lot of people to talk to. Yeah. Avery, holy cow. I had no idea. And how many different countries do you think are represented in that 14,000?
That's a great question. We have students from all over the world. There's students all over the Middle East. We have India. We have all over Asia. Obviously Europe. All over the world.
All over. So yes. I would think one of the biggest challenges, because you mentioned some important financial ones. We'll get to that in just a little bit. And then just kind of the cultural issues. Are you just wearing out Google Translate? or are you like a one-woman Pentecost where you get to speak language to everybody as they come to town?
I wish that was the case. Lord, I receive that blessing if he wants to give that to me. I wish that was the case. Thankfully, students that come here are very, pretty proficient in English. You have to be at a certain threshold to be able to come here. But that being said, that brings up a challenge of just because they know English doesn't mean they've been used to speaking it constantly 24/7 with strangers and different interactions that they have or pick up on jokes that ASU students have. They might not understand what's going on when somebody makes a joke or has different slang or lingo. And then think about this. Not only are they not used to speaking English all the time, but you have to speak it at a very high level for their studies that are a very high level for not only undergrad programs, but master's programs, doctorate level programs. So they're putting themselves in a completely unknown territory, and they are looking for people, whether they could say it or not or realize it or not, to come alongside them and help them navigate life in the U.S. Because not only are you running into language barrier, you're trying to figure out how to grocery shop at Trader Joe's or Fry's compared to shopping in a different location with different foods from the foods that you're used to cooking back home, or public transportation. There's a whole host of challenges with that, trying to navigate that as a student in the U.S.
So along that line, then, once you left your job at Grand Canyon, working in marketing, and that's a terrific story that I just enjoy the work that you did there, traveling all over and recruiting and getting folks admitted into Grand Canyon. But once you moved over to international ministry at Arizona State, tell us a little bit about the philosophy of international ministry. I just love the way that you describe spreading the good news all over the world without actually traveling the world.
Right, right. It is such an amazing opportunity. You think about missions all over the world are amazing and they're so needed. And I don't want to diminish the need of international global missions, missionaries getting sent to all over the world. But there are students that are coming from all over the world here in our own backyard. And kind of to what I mentioned earlier, they're coming here and they're looking for friendship. They're looking for community. They're looking for people to help them. They're more open than ever. They're apart from their families. They're apart from their norms of life. And like I said, they're more open than ever to be able to search on their own. Wait, is everything that I believed or I grew up believing right? Is it what I want to believe for myself for the rest of my life? You're in a different environment. They're open to faith conversations. I found more than ever willing at least to have a faith conversation with me or to talk about their belief systems from what they've learned back home and what they're kind of navigating and sifting through. And the beauty with international student ministry is it's really based in the root of friendship. Right. So I'm not just going, I would love, it's great to share the gospel with people in any context, in my opinion, but with international students specifically, I need to know and better understand where they come from, what they believe, so I can meet them where they're at, having the cultural awareness and intelligence to be able to have a conversation with them. That's going to be meaningful to them. And in the context of friendship, that builds trust. And I'm doing it because I genuinely care for them, right? I'm not just doing it just so I can share the gospel with them. Yes, that's true, but I'm doing it because I genuinely care for them, because I see how God's created them. He's giving me eyes to see that He loves them and they're His kids, and He wants to meet them where they're at and speak to them in a way that they're going to best understand. So it's strategic. I think that's a really good word, where I don't have to go overseas to share the love of God and the good news of the gospel, the life transformational news of the gospel with people overseas. They are right here, and they're more open than ever while they're here to be able to have these conversations. In my opinion,
I love that. And so, which do you find more frequently in your ministry? Folks who are from different countries and cultures who have been raised in their religion, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, or folks who are completely without religion. And so when you were talking to them about God and Jesus, they're hearing about this for the very first time in the context of not having a religious foundation at all. In other words, do you find more that you're dealing with a clean slate, or dealing with somebody who comes to you with a different religious background altogether?
Great question. I would say when it comes to international students, the larger population of ASU might be a different audience, but I would say when it comes to international students, I would say for the most part, from my experience, once again, generalization, but there's some sort of faith background, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, in some capacity, there's some faith upbringing, whether from the moment they step their foot here in the U.S. or even in their first month of studies, do they continue to follow or keep up those practices while they're here? That's a different story. But I would say for the most part, there's some type of faith background for these students that come here from what I've observed in the interactions I've had with students.
Now, that's very interesting, because to me, that puts you very, what's the right way to say that? That puts you in a very similar position to St. Paul. Right, he was taking the gospel out into all these different communities, where it's Athens, or what we now call Turkey, or to Rome, where everybody's pagan, and he's defending the gospel and advocating for it in a way where he's trying to convince folks to change their minds. So, have you found yourself like Paul, kind of getting into discussions about not just what people believe, but how the gospel is a better choice for them long term?
Right.
Or what do you think about that?
I would say the quick answer is yes. The reality of the gospel, right, is that He is the only way. he is the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him, and that's offensive to people. And I think a lot of people are comfortable talking about religion or about faith and saying, oh yeah, it's good if you believe something, if you believe in a religion, that's great for you if you believe in that. But the truth of the gospel is Jesus is the only way. And it's not caring or loving to not speak the truth, but once again, obviously speaking it in love, right? And so I heard this one message from this atheist one time. My dad had sent me this message before, and it was this atheist talking about if Christians really believed what they said that they believed, it would be the most selfish thing in the world to not share the gospel with people that don't follow Jesus.
Interesting.
And that got me. That was last year, and it's wrecked me, because I'm like, that's so true. If I have a friendship with a student and we start talking about talk about faith and they ask me what I believe, I'm going to be honest, because I care for them too much to not tell them what the truth is, right? And that's going to come in the right tone and, in a kindness and a genuineness and a care, because, I do care for them. It's not coming from, an aggressive angle or anything like that, but it's because I love them that I want to share this news with them. So, talking about what that looks like in the minutia of that conversation, obviously that's an ongoing conversation. But if your friendship is developed and you have that foundation there, it's going to make it a much more comfortable, if you will, if you want to call it that, environment to be able to have those hard conversations.
And those are hard conversations, because otherwise you're just knocking heads and in an academic kind of debate without a foundation of friendship. It's much more, I would imagine, much more difficult to get people to kind of come around, if you will. Avery, as you're talking about this, I respect the work that you're doing so much, because not only are you trying to do this kind of work for one different nation and students from that particular country, but all different countries. So have you found that students from a different part of the world are more receptive to the good news than others? Like in other words, as you're talking with folks, African kids are really getting it. European kids are too checked out, and I'm just pulling that out of thin air. It could be exact opposite. But have you seen any kind of trend along that line?
Oh, that is such a good question. I'm definitely going to report back to you in a year when I have some more experience under my belt. But from my time, we can talk back on the podcast.
On that.
But I would say from my experience, if I have a friendship with a student, I'm going to talk about my faith. That's part of who I am. It's going to come up. Might not come up in the first conversation, but it's going to come up. When we talk about the openness, I would say for the most part, any conversation I've had with a student, I would say they're willing to at least have a conversation about it. Whether they receive it or not is another thing. But they're definitely willing to have a conversation from the students that I've come in contact with. I would say, there's certain areas of the world that are maybe have more of a Christian influence. So those students might just be more willing in general to have the conversation. But then you kind of get into, is that cultural for you, or are you actually having a relationship with Jesus, and is that a day-to-day walk with the Lord? And so those students, I think it can be either harder or easier with those students because they have the knowledge there, but has it affected their heart yet? And are they willing to take that next step outside of their comfort zone to be able to follow Jesus? So that's a tricky one. It's a hit or a miss, I would say, but at least they're willing to have that conversation up front.
I love that. So you and Rebecca, my wife Rebecca, and our son Will and I met there while you were at work. How do you meet all these kids from all around the world who go to this giant school? I couldn't believe it. As we were there for spring training last year, I think I read there's something like 70, 80,000 students at Arizona State, 14,000 from other countries. So you just walk around the quad with the gospel in your hand, and or do you? Some Christians take the approach of literally getting on a soapbox with a megaphone. I don't think that's your vibe.
Yep.
So let's jump into that. What do you find? So, for example, our daughter Caroline is now a junior at the University of Alabama. One of her big concerns as an 18-year-old heading into school was sorority rush. So do you find that that Rush is a great chance to meet international girls, or are they not participating in that?
No, they're not participating in that. They are here to school. And
Yeah.
obviously, they're here to experience life in the U.S. and meet people and connect. But they're really focused on their academics. For most students, for them to come to study in the U.S., it could be a really big sacrifice for their family, or they just put a huge value on them coming to the States to study. So academics come first. So when it comes to meeting students, you run into challenges as far as when you're meeting because they do prioritize their academics. So definitely when you get into final season, midterms, or if they have an exam coming up, if you try to make plans with them, they might say, sorry, no, I got to focus, which I respect, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely. School comes first.
yes, absolutely. But sometimes it can be a challenge with scheduling. But no, when it comes to meeting students, having a presence on campus, just being able to be around and connect with students on campus naturally is what I would say I almost prefer. But what's really interesting with the international student community is internationals like to stick together. And so if they know someone from their home country that's also at ASU, from their country that's familiar to them, they like to spend time together, I would say, for the most part. So if you meet one international student, you might ask to meet with their friends, or they might want to introduce their friends to you. So it starts this network and this kind of ripple effect to be able to meet with other students. I'll tell you, for an example, I play pickleball every Tuesday night with a big group of international students, and through word of mouth, so many students have just started inviting other students because they love the community that we have, and it's a huge opportunity for them to just bring their friends into it. And so I've met people naturally through that word of mouth, then quite literally inviting other students, not me inviting them, but other students inviting other students. So that's been a big
I
opportunity.
love that, Avery. That, by the way, is how churches grow. And I know
Yes.
well, do you think of your mission as a church?
Oh, that is a great question. That's a great question. I would say I appreciate that the ministry that I'm a part of has a very strong emphasis on connecting students with the local church and being involved with the local church. So I definitely want to say that what I'm doing for me replaces, my church on Sundays and my community of believers that I'm a part of and connection with and community. I couldn't do it without them, So I would say for me, it's separate, but at the same time, we're building the church. Like if we're talking about the larger C church, we're building the church, making disciples that make disciples, that make disciples, that make disciples, hopefully not only in the U.S., but go back to their home country and share the love of God and the gospel message back in their home country. Something that I might not be able to do as well or as effectively as they could if they come to know the Lord here and are able to take that back home to their communities.
I love that. So tomorrow we are, Rebecca and I, our son James, who lives here in Florida near us, and Will from Atlanta are all convening in San Antonio to celebrate my father's 80th birthday. And I can't wait. One of the reasons San Antonio is there, and they developed this city and named it after St. Anthony, is missions. Franciscan monks came over from Spain to help colonize, the New World in the name of Spain, and built a total of 6 missions up and down the San Antonio River. The biggest one right in downtown San Antonio that's so famous is the Alamo. So my question to you is, as a missionary, how difficult is it to not have a building, not have a place where people can congregate, right? You're kind of out in the world, which I love. It gives you a lot of flexibility. But one of my dad's favorite things to do, and we're going to do this on Thursday when we get to see him, and maybe even tomorrow afternoon, is go see those missions, these 300-year-old buildings that have beautiful churches, but we're also working farms and places for people to live. So what's that like, having either the flexibility or the freedom to not have a place, or the challenge of not saying, hey, everybody meet me here at the mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's definitely challenges and also opportunities with that. I would say Number one, it's accessible. I'm not limited to only being able to meet in a certain building at a certain time, which is nice because, I can get coffee with a student and meet with them and just do life with them. I would say it's a lot of life on life what I get to do. So I might be picking a student up and going and taking them grocery shopping because they don't have a car and they haven't figured out the public transportation system yet. And so that just provides another opportunity for that authentic relationship, the friendship to just happen and be fostered. So that's an opportunity. There's challenges where I wish, students could know, oh, I'm on campus this time, every day in this building and there's a designated space. But, you kind of get creative and you find ways kind of around that. You can meet in a Starbucks, you can meet on campus in the quad in a certain area, right? So
Right.
There's opportunities with that as well at the same time. Definitely
One
a
of
good point.
our previous guests that I think I've introduced you to, Jillian Dacey,
Yes.
is a campus missionary at Clemson University in South Carolina, and she's specifically with the Catholic Church. So I got two questions about that because Jillian is with a group of other people who are all part of her missionary kind of effort. Are you working by yourself, or are there other ISI campus staff there with you at Arizona State?
Yes, we do have other ISI campus staff, which is amazing. So I'm not alone, which I'm really grateful for. I have a supervisor, and we have other campus staff that are here as well that I have a support system with. So if we host an event or something like that, we're definitely working together to be able to plan, coordinate, and I can learn from them and all their wisdom and years of doing campus ministry because I'm fresh, I'm new to this, but they have a lot more wisdom than me, and I'm trying to learn everything I can. So I'm very grateful. I'm not doing it alone. And I will say that there's other international student ministries that are on campus at ASU. But you think about this, there's 14,000 international students at ASU. We need all of the international ministries we can, and we need to come together and unify together over that one common goal. It's not a competition, right? We are doing the same thing for the same reasons, I sure hope, and we can come alongside each other and unify together to support and encourage each other. So I've gone to other international student ministry events too to support them and see what I can learn from them too. And I think that's a beautiful thing with the nature of this ministry.
And I didn't even think about that. I was going to ask you about, because that main drag there in Arizona State that goes right down campus, there's the Catholic Student Center and the Methodist Student Center, and then a few restaurants, and then there's the Episcopal, right? The ISI is non-denominational, if I recall. Mm-hmm. But when someone raises their hand and says, Avery, thank you for shining the light of Christ to me, I want to be baptized. I'm thinking of Philip and the Ethiopian, right? Mm-hmm. You've explained the scriptures to me now, right, and I want to be baptized. So where do you recommend that they go? Do y'all have relationships with all the churches or all the student ministries? How does that part work?
Ooh, that's a great question. We definitely do have connections with other ministries and other local churches. My thing is, I want students to get plugged in and involved in a local church. If they make the decision to follow the Lord, obviously I'm going to invite them to come to church with me. I would love for them to come to church with me. But if they find another church that is a Bible-believing church and they're following the way of Jesus and what the Bible says and are walking in that way with good leadership above them, who am I to stand in the way of that? I want them to find their people in their community, kind of getting back to the larger C church, right?
Right.
And so, so I would say there's a partnership there. Me being so fresh and so new, still getting connected, but it's been great to see the unity, and I've met other people from other student ministries and explained what I'm doing, and once again why I work at the restaurant by campus. And when other people find out, oh, you're a campus staff, I'm campus staff for this ministry, it's this excitement and unity. And I've gotten coffee with people from other ministries, and we've just been able to share our hearts and connect and get excited with each other, pray for each other. And ultimately, once again, we just have the same goal. And so it's a case-by-case basis with students. That's awesome. Right? But I want them to find their people and find a place to get plugged in where they can grow in their walk with the Lord ultimately.
Sure. I love that. So, Avery, you mentioned earlier that that there's this financial challenge of basically raising the money for your ministry and at the same time having to raise enough money to live. And that's one of the reasons that Rebecca and I, through our charity, Koinonia Mission, are so delighted to help you in your work. We're just passionate about your passion for spreading the good news. Tell us a little bit about how that works and how people who are listening to the podcast can help you. We're going to put links to everything in the show notes. Don't worry.
Great. Sounds good. No, thank you for saying that. And thank you guys, as always, for your support and encouragement. It's been great to be able to do ministry together. It's really a partnership. I would say that's something God has had to reframe my perspective of this ministry and what it means to raise support, because it's not me asking for money. It's quite literally a partnership where other people get to join me in this missionary work. I might be the one boots on the ground being able to connect with students, but ultimately it could not happen without other people investing in putting seed into this ministry. We're doing it together. Just because I'm the one on campus doesn't mean you're not going to get a kingdom inheritance for the investment that you have into this ministry. Right. It's a beautiful partnership, really. So as far as partnership, what that looks like, I do have to have people that are on my monthly support team, so I can give my greatest capacity to be able to have a presence on campus and be able to connect with as many students as I can on a day-to-day basis, right? So it happens because people decide to join my monthly support team, so I am able to survive and live in the States. You know, it's in the States, but it is still being a missionary in the U.S., as you said. So right. If you think about missionaries going overseas, if they're not working a traditional job over there, maybe they're working a part-time job, they still have to have funding to be able to live and support themselves and to be able to do things with students and to invest in students' lives. So as far as how it works, through ISI, as a nonprofit, we have the ability to be able to do tax deductible donations where people can choose to invest. And you could go on my link. I know you said you'll have it there. And people can choose to go on my support team. And if anybody would be interested in that, I would love to have a conversation with them individually to talk about what that could look like.
Exactly. I love that, Avery. All right. So as we wrap up our time together today, I know you got to get going to work here in just a minute. You know that the mission of the Christian Capitalist is to work hard and give generously to the poor and needy in the name of Jesus Christ. And our signature question at the end of each podcast episode is, what does it mean to you to be a Christian capitalist? As we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show, the way you take Jesus to work with you every day is a terrific example of that. But I would like to hear from your perspective. What does it mean to you to be a Christian capitalist?
Yes, I would say the verse that comes to my mind as you ask that question is Colossians 3:23, which basically says, work heartily unto the Lord. You're working unto the Lord, not unto men, right? So when I go to work every day, regardless of what my job is, you're working unto God, and I know God is already pleased with me, but I'm working unto the Lord. So that means I'm going to do things with excellence, and what I do with the outcome of that, with the money that I make, God, it's God's money to begin with, right? And so he's the one that decides where it goes. And so at the end of the day, I'm working hard, which hopefully will result in being successful financially. And with those finances, I have the ability to invest in other people in the way that God would want me to. I'm blessed to be a blessing, right? Like we talked about earlier. Right. And so to me, I would say it means to work heartily unto the Lord with everything that you do, with the job that you're in any environment that you're in. Work hard and then use the resources, the talents, and the abilities that God has given you to help others. That can look like a lot of different things, but the Bible talks a lot about helping the orphan, the widow, like you're talking about, the poor. Once again, we're blessed to be a blessing. Do unto others as you would want them to do to you, right?
Exactly. So we were just studying that lesson from Luke this past weekend. That's perfect. I love it. Avery, thank you so much for joining us today. I sure do appreciate your time and your passion for the good news and being able to spread it all around the world by staying right there at Arizona State in Tempe, Arizona. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And everybody, thank you for watching and listening to our episode today. As we mentioned at the outset, please like, share, follow on social media. Check us out at christiancapitalist.life. And remember, at the Christian Capitalist, the more we make, the more we give.